So this video that we're about to watch is on how men are jealous of women because they have such an easy time getting sexual access in the dating market. Let's watch and I'll get your reaction at the end. In a recent video featuring street interviews with women, one question asked how many partners is a woman likely to have had by the time she's 30? Answers amongst the women varied. Some said 15, some said 10, and then there were also higher estimations, 20, 30, even 50. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll put a link down below. Now, these women's answers created a very strong reaction. Lots of men were not pleased. I thought one particular comment was extremely insightful, and I want to read it to you now. I know why most men are angry. It's because most of us don't even get the chance to get numbers as close to females. The majority of females have it so much easier when it comes to dating and having sex, and men, we have to be sexually frustrated and deal with rejection, loneliness, depression, and we have to deal with that for years. The truth is, nobody has the balls to just say this. Why else would you even care about how many sex partners a stranger has had? Nobody really cares. I agree with him. I think that he is 100% right. It is not the only reason. It's probably not even the primary reason. There are strong evolutionary instincts that caution men against partnering up with women who have slept with lots of men in the past, and I will be doing a video on that in the future. But I absolutely agree with this comment that one of the main reasons men seem to get angry at promiscuous women is because of jealousy. Sex means so much to men. Now, I believe in sexual empowerment for men. I think male sexuality is beautiful, it's normal, it's healthy, and we should be looking to express it. There's nothing wrong with male sexuality. But it can't be denied that a lot of men feel their own sexuality as something of a curse. Sexual expression is this need that men have inside themselves, this powerful energy that they don't have that much control over. You don't have to act on it, but you can't just turn off your sexuality. You have biological triggers inside your body that induce you to be sexually attracted to lots of women. You are incentivized as a man to be promiscuous. From a biological point of view, men are desperate to be sexually intimate with women all of the time. But our reality, our cultural context does not allow for that. I think if a lot of guys were honest, if you asked them to describe their ideal life, it would look something like this. They could walk up to a girl, any girl that they see just walking along the street, tap her on the shoulder and say, "Want to have sex with me?" And she would say yes. That's what most men want their life to look like. But that is not reality. That is not the reality of men. But the thing is, that kind of is the reality for women. I want to play you a clip. This is a conversation that I had with a woman on this particular topic.
You know that sort of sitcom trope, like that constant running gag about men are afraid of commitment and women are just trying to get married as early as possible? I don't know how it's been for you, but through my 20s, I didn't really see a lot of evidence for that. I saw a lot of guys really keen to lock down a girl, and a lot of women actually very reluctant to commit, possibly because they knew they had so many options. Like, women are constantly bombarded with male attention, whereas the guy maybe feels like, oh my God, you're the first girl to pay attention to me in a year. I've got to make sure that this one lasts. Does that resonate with what you've seen as well?
Yeah, definitely. I actually, I agree with that. And I think that, yeah, like guys I've met and dated, they are, you know, more like my ex of a few years, has still, it's been like 4 years or something since we were dating and still hasn't like met someone. It must be harder for guys, like definitely. So yeah, for us it's just like a lot easier, like Tinder or something.
Seems like you have some sympathy for the male plight and how hard it is in the dating market.
I could, yeah. Well, my boyfriend now, like he didn't have a girlfriend before me at all, and I've had a handful of boyfriends, so he was a bit intimidated by that, and so yeah, it was just interesting. We were like at opposite ends like that, but we're still, yeah.
That was just a small segment. We had a much longer conversation, and she was awesome to talk to. Kind, friendly, intelligent, attractive. I think she was probably a high quality woman. Obviously, I don't know her very well, but I really enjoyed interacting with her. I've got the full conversation available on my Patreon for people who want to see that. But what she says is absolutely correct when she says that it must be harder for guys. Her ex-boyfriend, the relationship that ended 4 years ago, in those 4 years, she's moved on, but he still hasn't found a replacement girlfriend. Her current boyfriend, even though she's had multiple relationships, she is his first relationship. The difference in the dating market between men and women, particularly with regards to access to sex, is black and white. It is night and day. Lots of guys would give their left testicle to have the kind of sexual access that most women have. So why talk about this? I mean, is this likely to change? Well, on an individual level, yes. If you do the work and you become a high quality man, then guaranteed your options will expand and your access to sex will increase. However, don't get your hopes up, because even the supremely high status man is still not going to have access to the kind of sexual abundance that women do. It is so easy for women to have sex. If a woman wanted to sleep with 10 guys in a day, like she just wakes up and goes, yeah, I feel like doing that today, she can absolutely do that. That is 100% achievable. Men and women, in this regard, are basically living on different planets. So on an individual level, you can improve things for yourself somewhat, but there are lots of guys who just won't do the work. Frankly, they're not up to the task. And so the question is this likely to change on a more widespread, collective, social level? Can I envisage a future where men suddenly ascend in the dating market and the gender roles are reversed and suddenly men have the same kind of sexual access that is currently enjoyed by women? Is that likely? No, of course not. That's not going to happen because, as I've explained in my other videos, the way the dating market is partly because of social constructs, but primarily it's biological. That's not going to change. But if this is not going to change, why talk about it? Why am I bothering to even do this video? Honestly, the answer is just to increase awareness. Now, this is an educational channel, but I'll be the first to admit that part of what I do here is activism. I am an advocate for men in the dating market. And forgive the strength of my words here, but I actually find it pretty disgraceful how little awareness there is from the wider society of the struggles and difficulties that men face with regards to sexuality and dating. Not to get too conspiratorial, but sometimes it seems as though there is a vested interest in not listening to men's struggles, in not listening to men's pain. When it comes to dating and sexuality, men do get a really raw deal, but nobody wants to hear about that. Nobody wants to listen to this story of victimhood and give them any kind of validation of this injustice. Part of me wonders if that's because there are vested interests that want men to continue to work, to continue to struggle, to continue to contribute. And perhaps if men realize that there's no reward waiting for them, that there's never going to be any thanks for all their sacrifice and struggle, well, maybe they're not going to participate as keenly as they were back when they were deluded. But that's me giving expression to some of my more cynical thoughts. The other part of me very much believes that we are moving in the positive direction. That channels like this and how popular these videos are part of a movement towards increasing our understanding and empathy for men and their unique struggles when it comes to dating. And that all signs are actually positive that society is making room to finally listen to how difficult this has been. So what's the end goal here? What are we trying to achieve? Well, we want men to improve themselves, to become the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be, so that they can carve out a more advantageous position in the dating market. But that's sort of my goal for men. For women, my goal is more compassion. I want women to understand what it's like to be a man and to navigate these particular difficulties. I would like to encourage more compassion from women, more understanding, more empathy. I would like women to be aware that they have a privileged position in the dating market. And I've no interest in taking that away from them. That's biologically gifted to you. That's one of your privileges. Men have plenty of privileges in other areas. This is just how it balances out. But if women showed that they had some understanding of their own privileged position, then maybe they could show some compassion to men who are struggling in this particular area. Being a man and having this supercharged sexuality is not easy, especially in a culture where men have very little means to express that sexuality, where more often than not, it is demonized. So if there are any women out there watching this video, and I know that there are some of you, it's a very small portion of my audience, but you do exist, I just want to say thank you. I don't make content at all for women. Unashamedly, this is a channel for men. I give advice to men. Yet here you are, a woman, using your time to listen to me, to listen to men's struggles. Of all the things that you could be doing right now, you are here trying to understand the perspective of men. You're here listening to the challenges, listening to the pain of men. And I think I speak for most guys when I say that effort that you're putting in right now, that's really appreciated. The fact that you take the time to try and listen to the male experience and to sympathize really means a lot. I really appreciate it. You know, it's like the woman that I showed from the clip earlier. She showed understanding and compassion for the difficulties associated with being a man. And that's awesome. I hope there are more women out there like her, and I hope there are more women out there like you. I hope that content on this topic becomes more and more popular. And what we're seeing is the beginning of a wave where more and more women are made aware of what this is like. Because to me, this difficulty with dating and sexuality, this is like the untold story of the West. This is the dirty secret that we still haven't aired out into the mainstream. And I'm not saying that this should be a one-way street where it's only women making an effort to understand things from the male perspective. The vice versa is absolutely true as well. Both genders should be proactively working to try and understand the world from the other person's perspective. We need that understanding, we need that empathy to see things from new points of view. I sincerely believe that a large part of the culture war and this sort of aggression that you see between both genders is due to a lack of understanding, and that if we just had more information and just admitted to ourselves that men and women are different, then we could reduce so much pain, suffering, and confusion. That is my primary goal. I want to reduce suffering, and I sincerely believe that the way forward is an increase in compassion, empathy, and understanding. So for everybody listening, if that's your goal as well, we're on the same team, and I just want to say thank you. That's my video. First thoughts, who'd like to go? Summer.
I'm just wondering in what ways you're expecting a woman or wanting a woman to show compassion towards a man, and in order to acknowledge that it's obvious that men want to be having sex all the time. And in biology, women want to be only having sex only like maybe 1 or 2 days a month. So I'm just wondering how then a woman can show compassion towards a man during those times where she's absolutely not interested.
Three different ways. So the first is, I think women need to be a lot more conscious of how they reject the sexual advances of men. There's a huge demonization of male sexuality as, he only wanted sex. Dude, that's his biology. Show some compassion. He thought you were pretty, he wanted to talk to you. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think could really make a big difference is if women stopped giving bad advice to men and being dismissive when they complained about how difficult things are for them in dating. So stop saying things like, just be yourself, the right girl will come along. That's a very dismissive answer that doesn't take the time to actually properly empathize with what the man's going through. Dating is really hard for these guys. And for a woman, if she actually stopped and said, tell me, what's difficult for you? What are you finding? And listens to his pain and said, wow, that really sucks, and actually made an effort to show and understand what he was going through, that would be a huge step. And 3, for people who are actually inside relationships, I think women need to lower their expectations for how strong men should be with regards to all of these things. I think that too often women will prematurely break up with men the moment that they sense any kind of vulnerability or insecurity around this issue to do with, hey, you're one of the first girls to show interest in me, or I have not had a lot of sex, I've been waiting for the right kind of girl. Instead of being like, the guys that I follow on Instagram seem to have girls all over them all the time. Why aren't you like that? Wow, that applies to like 1% of men, the very top size men. The vast majority of guys are not living that kind of lifestyle. And if you understood that, then maybe you'd be more compassionate, you'd lower your expectations, and we could connect more as a human, and I'd feel less inclined to be some kind of statue or hero that I'm not. So that's my answer. Those are 3 things to start with. What do you think?
Yeah.
You're good with this?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Yeah. And then he would try and jump your bones. No, just kidding. I'm messing, Alex.
Sarah, what did you think of the video?
Well, there's 2 things. Like there's the request for compassion around that, and then there's also the statements at the beginning that are really strong around that, like women could, if they like, have sex with 10 guys in a day. Okay, that might have been true for me in my early 20s before I had kids. Certainly not true as a single woman with children. That's not. So you're talking about sort of single people who don't have families. It's a totally different scenario for people post-children. I can guarantee you a man who has kids, who's a single parent, can pick up and connect with other women a lot more like a decent quality man actually has a much better chance with women than a decent quality woman who has kids in tow. Partly she's just less available, but men will see her as definitely a dependency or something. So she is just not not even seen, actually.
When I say the dating market, you're absolutely right. I'm referring to that early 20s, mid 30s, kind of like that age bracket where people, before they've had children, that's what I think of as the dating market. There are other dating markets for people looking for secondary relationships once they've already had children that kind of operate on a slightly different set of rules. So thank you for clarifying that particular one.
And then the other, so that's kind of the dating market that I guess I'm aware of. But then the other one I'm aware of is teenagers. You know, as a mother, I have teenagers. And what I see in there is that there are the boys who are getting all the action and the boys who just would love it but aren't getting any. And there's also the girls who are getting all the action and could have as much as they want, and the ones who just aren't getting any, that aren't being seen, and the boys aren't interested in them. And it looks to me like it's going on both sides.
It does from the female perspective. And here's what I find women often miss in this conversation is because when they think of men, they tend to think of that top tier of men. The truth is that most women, were they going to lower their standards sufficiently, could have the same sexual access as the really, really popular girls. It's just that they're holding out for the top guy. It's not uncommon for a teenage girl to say, no boys like me. And she's thinking of Chad and like the top guys in the high school. And she's not aware of the 50 guys who are orbiting her, pretending to be her friend because they want to sleep with her, who she's just like, oh, not him. And I find this is a recurring theme. And when I said like those quite strong words in the video, I find it pretty disgraceful that this is the untold story. It is that bottom 80% of guys who make up a large majority of the gender that women just largely don't acknowledge or take into account when making these kind of calculations. You agree generally? And then the other thing to differentiate on is, so whilst you talk about standards there, so whilst a woman could just potentially get sex, like get the act of sex maybe multiple times in a day if she wanted to, chances are women don't just want to get the simple act of sex. She wants good sex. Exactly.
She wants, and it doesn't mean that he's really top looking or whatever. It means she wants sex with connection and attention, and she wants to feel special and held in all of that. She doesn't just want to walk out and get fucked. Whereas it's possible that guys might be more interested, I don't know.
It's possible.
In just racking up the numbers of penetration in a day.
There was a YouTube experiment. I don't know if you saw this one, but I want to share it both with you. They had a woman go out onto the streets and ask 100 guys if they would have sex with her. Like, hey, it was a pretty girl, come back. Would you like to have sex with me right now? Can you guess out of 100 guys that she asked how many said yes?
63.
Guess it just depends on if they were married or not. So if they weren't married, 100?
Well, it's just 100 random guys, so you have to take that into account.
Okay. Well, then I would guess 50% maybe weren't in relationships and 50% were.
Yeah, it's about 55. 55 guys. Just, you want to have sex right now? No talk, just complete stranger? Absolutely. Yeah. They then reversed the situation, and they had a guy go up to 100 girls and ask them to have sex right then and there. How many out of 100 girls do you think said yes? Good looking guy.
15.
0. Yeah. So it's one of those big gender disparities. Now, we're not talking in terms of quality, like the sexes, but just in that pure biological perspective, we are geared differently, like as men.
Well, and I think as women too, coming back to your first thing about jealousy, men are more jealous, and because some women have had more sex before going in. I think sex, for me personally, it was about exploring. It was about finding my body. And I wasn't using it as like a tally of how many people I had sex with. I wasn't even thinking of that. Like, I'm free to have sex with whoever I want to. And I was exploring. I was exploring my own sexuality. I was exploring my own body. I was probably, some of it was because I needed to be needed at that time. And so, to be judged unfairly because I've had so much sex, or could have, compared to some of the men that I was in relationships with, like, I don't even think that should be an a discussion, like that it's unfair to even ask a woman or have her tell you how many partners she's been with or anything like that. Like, I think that's, yeah. Whereas I don't know. Men have sex because, like you're saying, they have that drive. They need it. Like, it's part of them. They have those urges, that it's uncontrollable urges. Whereas I think for myself personally, as a woman, I was exploring more and I don't have those urges. So I was able to make a choice whether or not to have sex. And maybe some days I did go out searching for it. And I was, in some of those days when I went out searching for it, I didn't find it. Like, there are men that have high standards on women and not just, sleeping with whoever. So, like, yeah, I think it's a bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so men do it as well. It's having sex for reasons like, oh, I want validation. I want to feel close to somebody. And for people who came from like broken homes, for example, like they often like, oh my God, my father never paid attention to me. Those women often become promiscuous. Daddy issues is absolutely a stereotype that holds up.
But I don't think a man is going out to have sex in order to explore his, in order to, how can I do this differently that day? Or how can I explore my sexuality through sex? I don't know. Like, or I just think that I don't know. You'd have to tell, no clue.
It's
But
more
I would
about
think-
conquest, I
Yeah,
think. I do know
exactly.
guys who have done the exploring and they've got like a list and they're like, I want to know if I'm into that. I want to know if I'm into
Yeah,
that. But
exactly.
it's more rare. I think largely they just want to have sex with a big variety of women.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, or, how can I have an orgasm differently today or something like that, like, or is there a different position that feels better? Like, women are looking for those sorts of things, having it more of an experience through like the process of learning instead of just that outcome. Yep.
And do you think also, like, the other part that we're not mentioning in here is that as a young woman, like, so am I as free to say, yeah, I'd be up for just as much sex as I can get, or yes to someone just for the sake of sex? There's a whole bunch of historical, social constructs that go around me even beginning to feel free to be able to say that aren't there for men. So if a young woman is just like I think some of the teenage girls and stuff, they are just wanting to have their first experience or whatever. And I think as a young woman, there's definitely times where I was just up for sex. Mm-hmm. And in the same way that a guy is going to prefer to have sex with someone he's attracted to, well, I was going to prefer to have sex with a man that I was attracted to. But at times I was just up for exploring sex and sexuality. And I would be more likely to be demonized for that, thought less of for the amount of numbers of people I've had sex with than what a man is. And I think that whole thing gets in the way of women being free to actually say yes to the guy that the YouTube video you're talking about, where a guy just comes up and says yes. If comes up and asks me, do I want to have sex? It's like the first thing in my mind is going to be mistrust. Am I going to get demonized for this? Is this a trick question? People going to think that, that I'm a slut, that am I going to be basically, if I just say yes, I'm just up for sex, I am immediately admitting that I am a lesser value female than somebody who says no and plays coy and all of that kind of stuff. So because of that, I actually don't have the choice to honour the instinct to just go, yeah, all right.
There's safety issues there as well.
There's safety issues. And to be honest, the instinct to just go, yeah, I'd be up for sex quite frequently is I'm not free to admit to that instinct. And I don't think that women don't have it. And I was talking to a guy the other night about how, half the month, sort of pre-ovulation, ovulation time, I'm pretty on, I'm keen. I think about sex a lot and things like that. And then past ovulation up to my menstruation time, I'm can't take it or leave it. Not really that interested. Could be persuaded, but not, it's not hot on my mind. And then he said to me, looked at me and he goes, oh, so being a guy is like ovulating all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, well, that's the difference, right? So 10 days out of the month, I'm ovulating. 30 days out of the month, he's ovulating. It's just a disparity, hormonally. But otherwise, there's the social construct. Even if I am in that hot time, I'm not actually free to admit that I would choose it wherever I could get it, if that were the case.
Comment below if you want me to release some merchandise that says being a guy is like ovulating all the time. Would you wear a t-shirt that said that? Because I think that's pretty funny. It's a big discussion, the promiscuity one, and it wasn't entirely the exact purpose of this video. So I feel very tempted to go like really deep into my more socially conservative biological perspectives, because I hear exactly what you're saying. And it's a long discussion, but it might be outside the purview of this particular video. And I will be doing a video on that in the future. So I'd love to have you back and get your reaction to that particular one. So let's leave it there. Thanks for watching, guys.